Hello, my name is Scott Emler. Along with Mark Lyons, I'm one of the co-creators of PMI's Disciplined Agile Toolkit. On December 13th, PMI Poland will be hosting a discussion with me so that we can talk about Disciplined Agile. It's going to be very interesting. I know we've got some great questions and topics lined up, and of course there'll be opportunities for you to ask questions too. So I hope you can join me in PMI Poland on December 13th. Looking forward to seeing you there.
Okay, Kasia, I think we already have 701, so we can
start.
Yeah,
great. So once again, good evening, everyone, or also good morning. As I recall from the attendee list, we have people from different time zones here today, so very nice. My name is Katarzyna, and today, along with Anastazia, hi, Anastazia, we'll be hosting the meeting today. We are proudly representing Project Management Institute Poland chapter, Disciplined Agile team, and Społeczność Disciplined Agile, which means Disciplined Agile community, the first Disciplined Agile community in Poland. And we want to warmly welcome you on the third Discipline talk. We call it Discipline talk as it's not typical presentation or webinar. It's an opportunity for you to ask questions on both chat and live, as well as answer your question that you sent to us via social media that were, of course, collected before today's event. This is also how ideas for future Disciplined Agile talks are created. We look forward to the next inspiration and topics from you and from the topic you are interested in. If you have any ideas, any questions, really use today Q&A session at the end or post all your questions in the chat. Some technical information also from our side, you see now the screen. This event is being recorded and we will let you know on our social media when it will be available. And for those who collect PDU points, it will be also shown at the end of the meeting and share with you by email. Just also please remember to change your Zoom username to your name and surname or ticket number so we can identify you later. And this is needed also to submit materials from this event and to issue certification of attendance to those who are really willing and able to collect PDU points. Hi, Anastazia. Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. How are you? Everything fine?
Yeah, good. All fine, all good. So just, very excited about today's evening, or for someone, it's still morning.
Okay,
so maybe from my side, I just want to go really briefly through our today's agenda. So first, we will have a short introduction about what PMI and Disciplined Agile community is. Then our main speaker, Scott Ambler, he will join us, and then we will discuss the practical approach to Disciplined Agile. And in the end, there will be a QA session. So during the event, please don't hesitate to post your questions to the chat. And in the end, we'll have a summary of the event, and also we'll announce the PDU point, like PDU code. So please stay tuned and stay with us till the end. And so maybe the next slide. So our partner today is Katarzyna. Is a legal office from Wrocław. And so maybe let's start from a small reminder what PMI Poland chapter is. So generally, Project Management Institute Poland chapter is a part of PMI Global, the world's leading authority on project management. Through global advocacy networking and education, PMI prepares organizations and individuals to work smarter in our dynamic world. And also one of the most important part of PMI, also global and Poland chapter, is gathering volunteers passionate about project management So together with our combined strength, we organize business seminars, workshop, also international PMI PC Congress, as well as social projects such as Project Management Kids Camp. And by the way, during last International PMI PC Congress, Disciplined Agile was one of the 5 main themes. So here we can say that not only PMI Global promotes and spreads the knowledge about DA, but also our PMI Poland chapter makes its active contribution. So Kasia, I'll give now this scene to you.
Thank you, Anastazja. Yeah, and one of the PMI project, PMI PC project teams is the team for promoting Disciplined Agile on the Polish market. And one of the products of the work of this team is the Disciplined Agile community that was formed in January. We are about to celebrate the 1st anniversary. But what actually is Disciplined Agile community? This is a space created with a really lot of passion and commitment for both experienced agilists and also for beginners. And the goal of this community is to develop awareness and competences related to Disciplined Agile in Poland. I hope it sounds interesting to you, that you want to join us. You can find the links in the chat and choose wherever you want to join the community or our Disciplined Agile team at PMI PC. The Disciplined Agile and also community bring together Agile practitioners and project managers, but also work with mentors who are Disciplined Agile coaches around the world. And one of the recent successes of the community is its recognition as one of the official discussions forum in the Disciplined Agile area and its placement on the official Project Management Institute website. And now I think it's time to finally officially welcome our guest, Scott Ambler. Scott, you know Scott, I'm pretty sure Scott's co-creator of Disciplined Agile, vice president and chief scientist of Disciplined Agile at the Project Management Institute. Scott is also co-author of many books in the area of software delivery and delivery methods like Agile modeling or Agile data, and of course, Disciplined Agile. It's really amazing, Scott, to have you here with us today. Good morning. From where in the world you are connecting with us today?
Yeah, I'm currently in Toronto, Canada, so it's just barely the afternoon for me. But okay. Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Nice. So greetings from Poland. Scott, a lot of people we introduce to the topic of Disciplined Agile in and out of Project Management Institute always ask, how does Agile relate to Disciplined Agile, and why isn't Disciplined Agile more popular than Agile?
Yeah, so Disciplined Agile is a hybrid. We take great ideas from Agile, from Lean, from Serial, and traditional, and we put them together. We put them into context, and we show how they all fit together, and provide advice for when to use certain strategies and potentially when not to. And the reason why we do that is to help you make better decisions. And in my presentation, I'm gonna walk through exactly that, but and show you how to do it. And so it won't be theoretical; it'll be very practical. But so we go far beyond Agile, and it's a hybrid. It's very pragmatic, and we're really here to help you to make better process decisions and learn how to improve and to truly get better. So that's what it's all about. As far as not being as popular as Agile, well, we don't have the marketing clout of the Agile community. But I think what generally happens is when we can get people to look at Disciplined Agile, they love it, and they, sometimes, we'll get feedback along the lines of this is really complicated, but the reality is, my response to it is always the same. Okay, well, what would you take away? Don't tell me it's too complicated without first telling me what you can take away, because if you can tell me what to take away, I will take it away. And then usually what happens, that conversation goes to, oh, well, wait a minute, you seem to be missing this, this, and this. So we quickly move from it's too complicated to it's not complicated enough for me. So I think that's an interesting observation. But what happens, even particularly with experienced agilists, is once they take a look at DA, overwhelmingly the response has been, why haven't I heard about this? Well, the marketing has been that great, but more importantly, I needed this years ago. I wish I'd known about this years ago, because it solves so many problems that we still have, and that we're struggling through. And you've presented it clearly, and you give us choices, and you explain why it's important. And even from some very senior people, we get this sort of feedback. But the challenge for us is one of marketing and to get the word out there. So it's I love doing talks like this to help get the word out.
Hey, thank you. I really buy this explanation. Speaks to me. For me personally, also the Disciplined Agile is a trigger that is more about flexibility and agile adoption, and it's more about tailoring and the conscious acceptance that no two implementations are identical, just as no two companies or teams are identical.
That's it. Everybody's unique. You're a unique individual. Your teams are unique. Your organizations are unique. You face unique problems. But having said that, you can still learn from each other, and you can still adopt techniques that are proven in practice, the ones that are right for you, and if you know about them. And I think one of the challenges in the Agile community is all the purism. And some of the religion, some of these methods have turned into religions almost, and people don't, they can't see beyond the method that they're following, that they've adopted, and think, well, this is Agile. I'm doing Scrum, therefore this is Agile. No, you're doing Scrum, and there's a way more to Agile than just that, or just SAFe or whatever else. But if you don't know that there's more out there for you, and if you don't know that there's some great stuff that's not Agile that you could also benefit from, then it really is problematic. And you really do want to look at the bigger picture and be willing to learn and improve.
Yeah, exactly. However, our explanation now are very high level, rather on the level of the mindset, but it's time to get real, Everyone who starts with Disciplined Agile, and really everyone who is interested in Disciplined Agile at some point comes to a point where she is looking for answers, So, Scott, could you say, please, how does Disciplined Agile compare to frameworks such Scrum, SAFe, Kanban, and less? If you were asked that question, what would you say?
So I get asked that question all the time. So and I'll show some examples in the talk. But so Disciplined Agile is a toolkit. It's not a framework. So where the frameworks tell you what to do, often prescribe what to do, DA instead walks you through, here's what you need to think about, here are your options, and here are the trade-offs of those options. So choose the right strategy for you in the situation that you face. Because I don't know what situation you're in, so I can't tell you what the best practice is. Nobody can. And I think the frameworks, they present easy answer. Well, what appear to be easy answers, which everybody's looking for. So, to be fair, people want to be told easy answers, but there really isn't an easy answer. And you really do need to take responsibility for your own way of working, your own agility. And that's what DA helps you to do. So if you're willing to step up, DA is a very good thing. So, and it's not Scrum versus DA or SAFe versus DA, but it's more along the lines of Scrum plus DA or SAFe plus DA. So we teach you the skills to improve. And so our philosophy is start where you are. So if you're currently doing Scrum, great, you're doing Scrum. If you're currently doing SAFe, great, you're doing SAFe. If you're currently just doing traditional stuff, great, you're doing traditional stuff. And we give you the skills to improve on what you're currently doing and get better over time. And this is what the successful organizations do. And this takes a bit of skill and a bit of knowledge, but you can learn how to do this too. And I think, so don't take it as like Scrum versus DA, but really Scrum plus DA. So we can teach you how to improve on what you're currently doing and get better.
I think it's really good also that you're saying it, because still on internet there are like we can find some skepticals about new DA approach, that it's it's actually something what was old and it just got refreshed. But I think still more like the most of people, they are interested in the like new toolkit, and they're trying to adapt it also to their situations, as you were saying. But as we live and we work in the world which is like constantly changing and evolving, I think also one of the main questions, like from audience, like how to be up to date, like how to learn Disciplined Agile quickly.
Yeah.
Is there a way?
Well, there's great training. Obviously, there's the DASM and SSM training. If you're a bit more experienced and are aiming to be a coach, then there's the Disciplined Agile coach certification, or the Disciplined Agile value stream certification. So you can come up to speed fairly quickly like that. If you're more of a reader, then there's the Choose Your Wow book. And it's actually, the current edition is fairly thick, but we're just about to release a new edition of it at the end of January that's much shorter. So I think will be considered an easier start. Of course, there's the website. There's a lot of great stuff on the website. Mm-hmm. There's a e-learning course called The Basics of DA, which is also available. That's going to get updated in the new year as well. So there's a lot of great stuff there. So it really does depend on your learning style and what you mm-hmm. prefer to do. And of course, on projectmanagement.com, there's a bunch of great videos as well that you can read and earn PDUs while doing it. So
that's true. Also, I think there are now like a lot of available resources, especially on PMI website. Like there are more and more webinars, which are of course, some of them there are more like extensive courses, but also I think it will be good information for everyone that there are like some webinars which you can just register for free. And you can watch them, and also I think like take a lot of useful information. And despite your level, like you can be a beginner, also you can be like super advanced. And I think everybody can find a material which will better suit to their experience. I see. Sorry, I just see the question on the chat. Is it only for PMI members? I think this question is about the resources. Like if it concerns these free resources, which I'm talking about, they are for free. So you're just registering. Like you don't need to pay a membership fee. So you just register as a user, and then you have access. But I think in the end we will tell more about it. But so let's move on.
Yeah, when you talk about that, it brings up more questions also for me. I really dream of such moment someday that I myself would like to come with another bag full of questions about DA, also to you maybe, Scott. But for now, this has to be enough. Because now you are the one who would like to ask some question to our meeting participants. So 2 questions are about to appear on your screens. Please answer them. And Vasily, I will be really grateful to you for displaying them. Okay, so I think that is the time that I say thank you to all the participants for their responses. And Scott, if you would like to comment on this result, this is the moment as we leave you alone on the stage now. So let's inspire us.
Yeah, definitely. So the reason why I ask these questions, what's always good to hear where people are coming from, but there's a few interesting things to see here. Roughly only half of you were on project teams. The rest were on not project teams. So we're going to talk about that in the talk. So I'll leave it at that. But this is, and arguably maybe a program is a big project. So a little over half of you will say are on project teams. But it's interesting though that not everybody is on such teams. And that's okay. That's totally normal. And it has not that this is the topic of today's talk, but that has some very interesting implications for a project management office. When, roughly only, if only half of your initiatives in the organization are projects and the other are not, you'd better be able to govern both of those. And then the second question is interesting. I'm sort of surprised that there wasn't more intangible, but I guess with the both, that was sort of a gimme question. I'll have to rethink how I ask that in the future. But it's interesting though and the reason why I asked this question is you will behave very differently when you're working with atoms than when you're working with bits, because atoms obey the laws of physics. You're building bridges, you're building houses, things like that, and you will work very differently. There's a potential for predictability there, but there's still a lot of factors that make them reasonably unpredictable as well. But certainly, dealing with physics is a little bit easier. Dealing with intangible efforts, like building software, putting on plays, movies, TV shows, that's harder. That is a very different proposition than working with physical things, and it requires a very different set of rules. And what's interesting is if you take a look at the PMBOK Guide 7, that reality is reflected there, and arguably it was in 6 as well, but certainly in 7. There's a better understanding of the need to be more agile, to be more flexible, because intangible efforts require greater flexibility. They're pretty much not predictable, because it's far too easy for people to change their minds and for the situation to change and so on. And it's expecting predictability is a mistake, a very serious mistake. And you need to be flexible and smart, much smarter, much more skilled in those environments in general. So anyways, but different set of behaviors is the critical thing. So that's good, because DA is geared for all of these things. And this is one of the reasons why it's a bit more comprehensive than you see, because Agile is generally geared for intangible and for and rightfully so. It comes out of the software world, so a lot of the realities of that environment are apparent in the basic Agile things. So I just wanted to point that out, because and the answer to question 2 has some very significant implications for your approach to governance in your organization and approach to leadership, because you will lead and govern and motivate and guide tangible efforts in a much different way than intangible efforts. And that's critical to understand and to reflect upon. And it's interesting, earlier I mentioned the Agile Metrics microaccreditation that's coming out soon. Actually, it's pretty much out, but that's certainly coming out soon. And what's interesting is that microaccreditation, the running case study throughout it, has 3 different types of projects: an intangible software project, a more tangible, but certainly a combination of 2 with hardware installation, and then the third one is building a warehouse space or a shipping building. And you still have to measure, you still have to guide, you still have to lead all those initiatives, even though they're very, very different. How do you do that is a fair question. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, so thank you, Scott, for going into details. I think it's also really interesting for everybody to understand. So I think we can just give you the scene and start with presentation. Yeah. So and after it, we will have a QA session. So
yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just get going here. Okay, can you see my slide?
Yes.
Okay, good to know. It's not always obvious, is the problem. Okay, so let's jump into it. So anyway, so thank you very much for taking time out of your busy evenings in most cases to attend this workshop or attend this talk. So what I would like to do is walk you through how can you choose your way of working? How can teams improve constantly? Because this is what the the true agile organizations are doing. They have learned, they're learning organizations. They enable their teams to improve and to learn and to experiment. So how do you do that? And more importantly, how do you do it effectively? So maybe we can get beyond the failing fast stuff that we see in the industry. So anyways, as you heard, I'm one of the co-creators of the Disciplined Agile Toolkit. At PMI, I'm the VP and Chief Scientist for Disciplined Agile. I lead the IP team. I lead the methodology team when it gets down to it. So what I'd like to talk about today for the next half an hour or so is, first I want to talk a little bit about frameworks and how well they're actually working in practice. Then I'll talk about continuous improvement, and more importantly, how do we get beyond, how do we improve upon the continuous improvement approach that I hope you're working on, but, and to get to something that we call guided continuous improvement. So how can we improve faster and better, more effectively? So earlier we were talking about various frameworks and methods like Scrum and SAFe and LESS and many others. And there's a lot of marketing rhetoric out there of, how effective they are. And there's case studies and, a lot of really big claims. There's books, you've probably heard the claim you can do twice the work in half the time. And I'm sure you've seen case studies where you have 10 times productivity improvement and all these good sorts of things. And to be fair, I have in fact seen situations like this where teams have adopted a new method or a new framework and have had incredible improvements. But the reality is it really wasn't the adoption of the framework that helped them. It was the decision to stop fooling around. Those teams were so messed up that doing anything would have helped them. So we've really got to sort of take things with a grain of salt. So where do you go for good data? Where do you go for good information? Well, the research community luckily has some data on this. So what happens when you adopt a framework? And what happens when you successfully adopt a framework? Let's assume that it worked out well. So there's an initial learning curve. You've got to get training. You've got to figure out how to do this new way of working and maybe get some coaching. So your productivity goes down a bit. And fair enough, you're learning, that's okay. But if you successfully adopt the framework, then your effectiveness goes up. You're getting benefit from the framework. That's great. But then you hit the limits of the framework, because the unsaid challenge with the frameworks are that they all solve certain problems, which is great. They help you solve a problem, but they only really solve that problem. And then once you've solved the problem, they don't really have much more advice for you. And there's wonderful rhetoric, a lot of hand waving, everything's the art of the possible. And yes, you can tailor it on your own and you can figure it out. But they don't really tell you how to do that. Or if they do, their advice basically boils down to, please hire our expensive consultants or coaches. So fair enough, right? Fair enough. So the real question though is, well, what is the limit? How much benefit did you get? Right? How much? Is it 10 times? Is it 4 times like we keep reading about? Well, if you look at the industry data, it's not quite so good as what the marketing people are telling us. Now it's still good, 7 to 12% productivity increases. So this is data coming from a gentleman named Dr. Don Reifer. He earned his PhD from a reputable university, answering the question, how effective is Agile in practice? And then since earning his PhD, he's continued his research, and he will sell you this data. He consults in this stuff. And what's interesting, there's a couple of interesting things about this. He's got data from a very wide range of organizations, a lot of Agile teams, as you can see in the bottom corner here. But probably more importantly, he doesn't have an axe to grind. So he's not a SAFe guy. He's not a Scrum, not a SAFe guy telling you how great SAFe is, or he's not a Scrum guy telling you how great Scrum is, or a Disciplined Agile guy telling you how great Disciplined Agile is. He's just a guy. He's a research guy. He's trying to help, and he's doing the best he can. And he's sharing he's selling his information. He's got a few books and good stuff like that. So he's a great source of unbiased data. So anyways, things are working out well for the frameworks. This is pretty good. Not as good as advertised, but still pretty good. So there's nothing wrong with it. And this, of course, these are averages. Some organizations are doing better. Some organizations, worse. But on average, we're seeing pretty good productivity increases, and that's okay. So if 7 to 12% is not quite what you were hoping for, what do? Well, my advice would be, first of all, stop fooling around. Start thinking for yourself, right? Look around at the organizations that are doing reasonably well, that are doing really well, and figure out what they're doing. Well, the organizations that are doing well are what I call the apex level competitors, like the Amazons of the world, the Alibabas of the world, Spotify, Tesla, Google, like all these organizations that are really scary. Like imagine having to compete against Apple. Imagine having to compete against Tesla, right? This is not easy, right? Because these organizations really know what they're doing. Well, how did they get so good? What's so special about Amazon? What's so special about Google? Why did they get as good as they are? Do you think it's because they adopted a framework? No, of course not. They're not copying somebody else's way of working. What they're doing is they're evolving their own way of working. They're doing the best they can in the situation they face, and they're always trying to get better. And because they've been doing this in some cases for decades, they're way ahead of the rest of us. I was recently heard about a study that was showing that the high level, the most effective competitors in a marketplace like the Amazons, the Googles of the world, are two orders of magnitude more effective than the lowest effective competitors in that market space. So the Amazons of the world are over 100 times more effective than some of the competitors that they're going after. Imagine trying to compete when your competitor is 100 times better than you are. So this is the situation, and there's nothing special about Amazon other than the fact that they chose to get better, and they choose to continue to get better. So how do they do this? Well, they follow a technique called continuous improvement. So when they run into an issue, they run into a problem, they ask themselves, well, how could we potentially solve this problem? They then experiment. They try the technique out in practice in their environment. They give it a fair shake, and then they assess how effective it is. So what happens when they identify the potential things to experiment with, they also ask themselves the question, how are we going to know that it worked? How are we going to measure the effectiveness of this, right? So they put some measures in place, they try it out, they run the experiment, they assess how well it worked, and if it worked out well, they keep it. Didn't work out well, they abandon it. And if they're polite, they share their learnings with others, and they go on and they continue on. And they've been following this continuous improvement technique in many cases for years, if not decades. Now, you've probably heard this. There's several different flavors of this. There's PDCA and PDSA. So, but they're all basically the same sort of thing, right? It's a hypothesis-driven approach where you run an experiment, you see what works, you adopt the good stuff, you abandon the bad stuff, and you continue on. You just continually improve in small steps. So that's the basic idea. So the organizations that do this, the Apples, the Googles, the Amazons of the world, they enjoy improvement curves that look like this. They just continually rise. And to be fair, these are jagged curves, right? Because there's some failures, so your effectiveness goes down for a bit, but then you abandon it and your effectiveness goes back up. And over time, because you're keeping the good stuff and abandoning the old stuff, or you're abandoning the stuff that doesn't work out well, you're constantly improving. So this is how Amazon got to be 100 times more competitive than some of its competitors. They just have been improving small step at a time, and they've been doing so for years. So what do? So in the Agile community, unfortunately likes to adopt fads. We've been doing this for years, and I'm not going to go into details on this one, but anyways, this is what we do. And one of the current fads is to fail fast. And certainly failing fast is better than failing slowly, but it's still failing. And there's a lot of rhetoric. You're not really failing. You're learning, and okay, fine, whatever. But maybe we could have learned more effectively. Nobody ever says that, right? It's like I'm sure the guy on this Sadoo or whatever this thing is, jet ski thing, I'm sure he's having a lot of fun until the failure. In this case, I suspect that was a lot of pain. But anyways, I hope he survived. So fair enough. So what actually happens? So I spun a story a couple minutes ago about the wonders of continuous improvement. But what actually happens in practice? Well, we're following this process and we run an experiment and it fails. Well, it fails fast. That's good, right? So we try again. We fail fast again. We try again. We fail fast again. We try again. And then suddenly we succeed. And then so we adopt it and we share and continue on. So that's typically what happens. We have several failures in a row, then we have a success. Yay. Well, maybe, do we need to fail so many times? That's a valid question. Could we be smarter about what we experiment with? That's a valid question. Can we improve on continuous improvement? That's a valid question. So let's ask it. So let's take a look at the continuous improvement process. What's the issue here? Well, the issue is, some experiments fail. And you're only human. You're going to have some failures, and that's okay. And if you're not failing, then you're not taking on enough risks, right? So, having failures is in fact a good thing, but do we need to have so many? And failing fast is certainly better than failing slowly. So that is good. I'm not knocking that, but I am knocking the number of failures we have. So can we succeed earlier? Can we succeed and can we have fewer failures and succeed faster? Well, I think yes. So the real issue is in that second step. So if we can get better at identifying the potential techniques to experiment with, at identifying strategies that will work for us in our situation, we'll more than likely have fewer failures because we'll be smarter. We'll be making better process decisions. We'll be smarter about what we're experimenting with. So how do you do that? Well, if you have access to a good coach, somebody who's been there, seen similar problems before, and can give you advice on, I've seen this work in a similar situation, so why don't we try this? Then you'll more than likely have fewer failures. But the problem with coaches is they're expensive, they're hard to find. Do you even know how to hire a coach? There's a lot of people claiming to be coaches, and there's a small subset of them that are actually good coaches. Can you distinguish? Another strategy, which works phenomenally well with coaching, and I'll walk you through that in a bit, is if you have access to a process knowledge base like the Disciplined Agile Toolkit, if you know how to traverse it and read it and apply it, then you can make better decisions. And the entire thing here is if you have the humility to recognize that even though you're unique in a unique situation, facing a unique problem, the reality is that you probably are facing problems right now that are very similar to issues that other people have solved before. Sometimes hundreds or thousands of teams before you have faced and overcome the problems that you currently face. So if you can leverage their learnings, you don't have to have as many failures. You don't have to have as many failed experiments because you can make better decisions. We call this strategy guided continuous improvement. So let's take a look at what this looks like in practice. So first of all, where would you need to improve? Where, in what situations? Well, obviously at the team level, right? My team can always get better at what we're doing. Why not? We can also improve across teams because my team has to interact with other teams to get the job done. One of the great myths in the Agile community is that our teams are autonomous. This is observably not true. We're semi-autonomous at best. And we might be autonomous every so often, but we're going to have to collaborate with others. I'm going to have to work with the finance team, for example, to get funding for things. We're being governed. I'll have to collaborate with other teams. If I'm part of a program, by definition, my team is collaborating with other teams. I might have to collaborate with the procurement team in order to buy things. I might have to collaborate with the human resources team in order to hire people. I was just doing that today, actually, at PMI, right? And that's good. That's good. The HR people know far more about hiring people than I do. So why wouldn't I interact with them? We need to improve across the organization and across value streams in the ways that we bring products and services to market or to our citizens in the case of government agencies. Unfortunately, most improvement only happens at the team level because there's what I call a glass barrier to Agile adoption. We really struggle in many cases to get Agile outside of the IT department. Agile's geared for software development. That's where it came from. That's great. But we really sort of struggle to get it beyond the team level, and particularly even to get it outside of software teams. And then there's also organizational antibodies, your organizational culture, the existing management structure, the existing organization structure, the existing people will push back. They'll fight against any sort of change. They're very happy with what they're doing now. So they don't want to change. And they have a different vision than you as well, right? So there's we like to say that organizations are rubber bands. You can push them and improve them so far, but if you don't do something to snap that rubber band, it'll always bounce back to where it was. So you've really got to know what you're doing to do organizational improvement. So who does these things? Well, if you want to improve at the team level, you're going to need help from a team coach. If you're improving across teams, that's something that senior coaches do. Because the challenge with improving across teams is that coach needs to be interact with my team. So if I have a marketing team, for example, the way that you interact with a marketing team is very different than interacting with a finance team. So if the marketing people and the finance people need to identify a better way of working so that way they can collaborate more effectively with each other, then we're going to need help doing that. Okay, that's easier said than done. And then finally, we need enterprise coaches to help across multiple teams, or value stream coaches to help across large portions of the organization. And that's a heck of a skill. So different situations require different types of coaches. So let's go through some examples. What does this look like in practice? So improving at the team level, as I said, this is pretty straightforward. So in this case, I have an existing team. We're bringing a product to market. And it doesn't have to be a software product. So we're bringing teddy bears to market, right? This is our product, teddy bears. And we're selling teddy bears, and our existing market, our existing customers love it. They buy these teddy bears all the time. They love what we produce, but we're not growing the market. We're not getting new customers. We're just maintaining our existing customers. So we got a problem, right? The customer base isn't growing, and yet we need to grow it in order to be successful. So what do we do? Well, we go to the toolkit. This diagram, and if you're familiar with the DA toolkit at all, this is the process goals for team agility. And we've luckily on my team, somebody has gotten some DA training, and we know that looks like we've got a problem with the way we explore scope. We're not gathering the requirements effectively. We're not our product owner doesn't know how to gather the right requirements that represent the potential customers. So we dive down to the next level of the toolkit. This is called a process goal diagram. Now, if I have somebody on my team that has reasonable experience in business analysis, this is probably enough information for them, right? This is more of at this point, we're basically looking at a checklist or a reminder list. And they look at this, oh yeah, I know what technique would work well for us right now in this situation. And then they would share it with us. But sadly, I don't have anybody on my team like that, right? Just a normal team, unfortunately. So the way you read this diagram is, in this case, we have the process goal of exploring scope. We want to get a handle on the requirements. When we're exploring scope, there's a collection of issues, a collection of decision points we need to make. What purpose, what's the purpose of this thing that we're producing? How are people going to use it? What data do we need to collect about it? What's the business process that supports it? And so on, right? So remember, in DA, we don't tell you what to do. We tell you what to think about. And then we give you options. So in this case, there's multiple options for exploring usage. Not just epics and user stories, which you might have gotten to learn about on your Agile training, but there's also many other techniques, some of which might be what we need to do. So as I said, if I had somebody with business analysis background on the team, they'd probably, this information is enough for them. Good reminder, oh yeah, let's try this. But sadly, I don't have that. Oh, the other thing I should mention here is that notice how there's two different types of lists. There's lists of techniques with an arrow beside them and lists without. So if there's an arrow, that's an indication of an ordered list. And what that means is that the strategies towards the top of the list are generally more effective than the strategies towards the bottom of the list. When there's no arrow, it's unordered. So we can tell you what the trade-offs are of all these techniques, but we can't tell you that this technique is generally more effective than that technique. Okay, just so in a way, it's a bit of a maturity model, and in a way, it's not. So let's go down to the next level of detail, because we just don't have the experience on the team. So we realize we got a problem with the way we're exploring usage. So let's dive down to the toolkit. Now, this is a screenshot from the Disciplined Agile browser, which is available free of charge from PMI.org. You need to be a member, but membership is free. So we dive down into the details because, once again, we don't have business analysis experience. So you can see here, each of these techniques are described with a paragraph or two, enough to give you an idea of what it's all about. We also list the trade-offs. What are the advantages and disadvantages of each of these techniques? So that way you can make a better decision as to whether or not a technique sounds like it's going to work for you in the situation that you face. There's no such thing as a best practice. All practices have advantages and disadvantages. They work well in some situations, and they're spectacularly bad ideas in other situations. So as a professional, you need to learn to choose the right strategies for you, given your situation. Now, I don't have an example of this, but if this is still not enough information for you, the tool also has references. So for example, we can, so if we don't know what a design sprint is, well, there's references to articles or blog postings or videos about, how do you do a design sprint, okay? So you can continue diving down to the level of detail you need to make a decision. And in this case, we realized, you know what? Personas sound like a technique that we should experiment with. This sounds like the technique that will work well for us in our situation. We believe we've got the skills to do it. We believe we can learn it. We believe we can apply it. And hopefully, and it sounds like it's going to work. So now we've made a bet. And so instead of just randomly guessing or stumbling into an article online and hoping that that's the best, that makes sense for us, we instead have, do a little bit of thinking, identify our potential options, and home in on what option sounds to be the best for us. We have fewer failures that way. So let's do a slightly more complicated example. So here we've got a situation where my team has to get funding for the next project. So our funding is about to run out. We're at the end of the current project. So the finance people have come back and said, hey, you know what? We need a business case. You want to get funding? You need to justify what the heck it is that you're doing. Give us a plan, give us estimates, get reviewed, all that good sort of stuff. And hopefully you'll, if you do a good job of it, we'll give you more funding. So my team, being agile, we start complaining, right? So, we don't want to, this is going to take us a couple of weeks. There's not a lot of value add in this. Is sort of wasting our time. Why do you insist on this? Doesn't make any sense to us. Why can't we be more agile, more effective? And the finance people come back and says, well, this is our standard process. In the past, we've tried time materials, which you agile people seem to like. It didn't work. Too risky. We're not willing to do time materials now because it failed several times already. So you want money, you got to follow our process. And in most organizations, the conversation would stop here and you do what you're told. But luckily, we're disciplined agilists, so we can do better than that. So what do? Well, we go to the toolkit. In this case, we have a problem with the way, the approach of securing funding for the initiative that we're on. And what we do is, and once again, we don't have any finance expertise in my team because we're just a normal team, no finance experts on it. But we realize that we're currently taking a fixed price approach and we have a formal request process in place. And if you remember how I told you that the arrows indicate ordered lists and that the strategies towards the top of the list were generally better, more effective in practice than the strategies towards the bottom of the list? So we can see here that in both cases, there's several better strategies that we could potentially apply if we could get permission to experiment with them. So, and it's not up to us in this case, right? We have to come to an agreement with the finance team of this is a new technique that we're going to experiment with to see if it works for us in our situation. But sadly, we're not finance experts. So what do? Well, we dive down to the toolkit. We do a little bit of reading, right? Because we have to be able to have an intelligent conversation. We just can't go and start whining to finance. Oh, we have to do time materials. Why? This is what what we what my Scrum coach tells us to do, right? They're not going to listen to you. So we do a little bit of reading, and we discover, oh, look, there's some problems, there's some issues with our current approach. There's also some good things about our current approach, which more than likely is what the finance team is focused on, and they're probably downplaying the negative things. So now we can start having a coherent discussion about maybe why our existing strategy isn't as good as we think. We can also go to the toolkit and we see, hey, there's other strategies available to us. Maybe we should learn about those. So we see, two of those four are time, materials, and stage gate. And there's advantages and disadvantages to both. So none of these techniques are perfect. You got to find the right ones for you in your situation. But we also know that, even though time materials is better and is fairly popular in the Agile community, we've already failed at that before. Chances are pretty good we're going to fail again. So experimenting with time materials is probably not the way to go. So instead, we think, you know what, the stage gate thing, even though it doesn't seem to be as good as time materials, and it's not, it's a step in the right direction. Maybe we can talk the finance people into experimenting with this. And if so, let's run the experiment. Let's do what we can to make it work for us. If it works for us, we can adopt that strategy moving forward, so it's improved. And maybe because we've had this success, maybe next time we can get permission to experiment with time materials. In this case, we can come to an agreement that, hey, you know what? We made stage gate work out well. World didn't come to an end. Maybe we can get time materials work out. Success leads to more success. Finally, let's work through an example of trying to improve across the organization. So here we have the life cycle or the workflow for value streams. This is in the value stream layer of the Disciplined Agile Toolkit, which is what the Disciplined Agile Value Stream Consultant and upcoming Value Stream Management microcred is all about. So anyways, what's the scenario here? So in this scenario, the PMO comes to us and they say, hey, we need to release new offerings to market faster. We want to make more money, make it more often, more and faster. Product management says, that's a great idea. And we can do this if we release minimum business increments into the marketplace rather than big releases. So we can have a more regular release cycle of getting new functionality out there. It's less risky. And because we're doing it more often, we're actually earning income faster and more often as well. A lot of good stuff to be said about smaller releases. The portfolio management people come back to us and say, well, that's a great idea, but we fund projects. We don't fund new features. The release management people chime in and they say, we would love to support a quicker release cadence, but unfortunately, database changes take 3 months. So we can't release faster than that because the data folks are so slow. The data people come back to us and they say, well, data is different. We need to think everything through up front. Agile doesn't apply to us because we're special. And that's totally false, by the way, but don't get me going. And then the portfolio management people come back to us and they say, well, yes, but we need to release new offerings to market faster. So the conversation's gone around in a circle, goes nowhere, right? So what do? Well, it's the same idea. Once again, our we get, in this case, we need like an enterprise coach because just a lot of teams are involved. And of course, we know there's more teams than just these 4, but that's what fits on my slide. So what we do is we have to now negotiate a strategy across all of the teams that are involved, because we have to negotiate what changes are we going to experiment with? What are we going to try? What are we going to experiment with and see what works for us? Because this is all interconnected, right? Because as you can see, the workflow of a value stream begins, ends, and hopefully continues with a customer. It all has to fit together effectively. Okay, it's not just about silo teams doing their own thing now. It's about real collaboration across multiple teams in your organization. So if you need to do improvements across multiple teams, well, then you need to negotiate across multiple teams. And multiple teams need to experiment, in sync with each other and learn together and improve together. So that's a heck of a skill. So the Disciplined Agile Toolkit is all about enterprise agility. How can we help an organization improve? in general, not just about software development. It's really about the entire organization improving. And these different groups, these different areas in your organization are going to improve at different rates for different reasons. They all have different priorities. They all have different ways of looking at the universe. The finance people come to the table with a very different mindset than the software developers, who have a different mindset again than the human resources people, who have a different mindset yet again from the marketing people. They have a different way of looking at things. They have different priorities. They have different ways of working. They're all important, and they all need to work with others. So how the heck do we improve across the organization? Well, that's the question that Disciplined Agile addresses. We have a mindset for doing this. So it's not just about software development. So many people will point to the Agile Manifesto, or more accurately, the Manifesto for Agile Software Development that was written 20 years ago to address the problems faced by software teams 20 years ago. And they'll often say that's the mindset for agility. Well, I disagree with that. I love the Agile Manifesto, don't get me wrong. I know most of the people involved with it, but that in no way, shape, or form should be the basis anymore for a mindset for agility. We've learned things in the last 20 years. Our scope is significantly greater now. We're talking about enterprise agility, not just talking about software agility. So at PMI a few years ago, we stepped back and we asked the question, well, if we were to rewrite the manifesto, knowing what we know now, having a different scope than what they started out with 20 years ago, what would we do? And we came up with this. So we capture the mindset as a collection of principles. So because we believe in these principles, we make promises both to ourselves and to the people that we collaborate with. Here's how we're going to behave. And to fulfill these promises, we follow a collection of guidelines. So you've probably noticed most of this stuff is lean, if you're familiar with lean, and people-oriented, right? So there's some agile stuff, and there's also some lean stuff in there, and that's good. A lot of great and interesting ideas, and this is well documented on PMI.org, all free of charge. It's in the Choose Your Wow book. If you're a PMI, if you're a paid up PMI member, you can get a PDF of Choose Your Wow for free, just like you can get the PMBOK guide for free. If you're not a member, it's $20 US, so it's fairly inexpensive. A lot of great stuff there. But like I said, it's on the website for free anyways. It's well documented. One more thing I want to bring up before I go to questions. When you're starting an initiative, you need to get started on the right foot. So it's not just about improving in place, which is a very good thing. But when you're starting up a new team, you got to make sure you start going in the right direction. So Disciplined Agile is based on empiricism. It's based on our experiences working in organizations around the world to become more effective. And one of the things that is spectacularly easy to observe, if you choose to, it's that different teams work in different ways. So as a result, we support multiple life cycles. We don't prescribe things. So we support an agile project life cycle. Roughly half of you said you were on project teams. We also support a continuous delivery agile life cycle. This is more for product teams or services teams. These are both based on Scrum. We support a lean project life cycle and a lean continuous delivery life cycle, both of which are based on Kanban. The top two life cycles are project life cycles. The bottom two life cycles are product or service team oriented life cycles. We also support an exploratory life cycle based on lean startup. So how do you explore ideas for a new product or service to bring to your customers? And we support a program life cycle for a team of teams. And I believe, I think it was 12% of you were on a program. So we support that. In the future, we're going to support, we're going to add serial life cycles to the toolkit, a serial life cycle, I should say, and two continuous delivery, or not, two citizen developer life cycles as well, to support the good stuff going on there, because there's some really good stuff going on in citizen developer. So one of the challenges with supporting multiple life cycles is it tends to get senior management worried. What do you mean different teams work in different ways? How the heck can we govern? How can we keep an eye on these people? How can we help them be successful? Well, governance is not a swear word in Disciplined Agile. we recognize that you are being governed and that you deserve to be governed well. So we explicitly support effective governance. We take a lean governance approach in Disciplined Agile, and it's baked right in. One of many aspects of governance in Disciplined Agile is we support explicit risk-based milestones, not artifact-based. Traditional governance strategies tend to fail and tend to devolve into bureaucracy because they're based on artifacts. Fill out this template, get it reviewed by these people and blessed by these people, create this artifact and get it reviewed. And then the artifact gets created, reviewed, and then it's never updated again. It sits on the shelf gathering dust. When that happens, that's an indication of useless bureaucracy. That is not governance, that's bureaucracy. Huge difference. So we support risk-based milestones. So the idea, as long as the teams are paying down these risks when appropriate, in an appropriate manner, that's great, right? Let the teams, work in the most effective way possible for them in the situation that they face, yet still support governance, and that's okay. So how do you learn more? Where do you go from here? Well, just to wrap up, I started by talking about frameworks, and we saw that the improvement curve for adopting frameworks, which is positive, looks like this. There's absolutely nothing, great start, nothing wrong with that. We saw that the more effective organizations out there are following a continuous improvement curve. The smarter organizations are doing what's called guided continuous improvement. They're applying the DA toolkit to improve faster. They've got the humility to recognize that they can learn from others, and they do, and they apply the toolkit to do that, to make better decisions. So our philosophy in Disciplined Agile is start where you are, do the best that you can in the situation that you face, and you're professionals, I know you're doing that already, but always strive to get better, always be looking for ways to improve. And that requires experimentation. And yes, you're only human, you're still gonna have the occasional failure, but you'll have a lot fewer failures than if you're just trying to figure it out on your own. And that's okay. So at PMI, we're all about helping you to work smarter, to become change makers, to become more effective, more successful in your careers, to help your organization. So successful organizations take responsibility for evolving their own agility. They're not, they might have started with these frameworks years ago, but they've moved beyond them. They've learned to learn. They've become learning organizations. So many of you have probably heard of something called the Spotify method. Well, the true Spotify method is to do continuous improvement. It's not to, have tribes and guilds and, whatever other cool terminology there is. They're constantly improving. They're constantly getting better. And that's a good thing. So to learn more about DA, there's several potential workshops or certifications you could choose to earn. The intro certification is called Disciplined Agile Scrum Master. We're probably going to rename this in 2022 because it's about far more than just Scrum. It really does teach you how to start improving using the DA toolkit. There's the DA Senior Scrum Master, and that's really where we're teaching you to become a team coach, to lead improvement at the team level. Then there's the Disciplined Agile Coach. That's a reasonably new certification. And this focuses on how to lead improvement across disparate teams. If you're an existing Scrum coach or a SAFe coach or a LESS coach, you really want to take this certification. This is what's going to help you to get out of framework jail. To get beyond, the leveling out of your effectiveness. And then there's the Disciplined Agile Value Stream Consultant. This is what really is teaching you to be an enterprise coach, to coach across teams. And this is to coach and improve across value streams. And that's one heck of a skill. So anyways, thank you very much. Let's take some time for questions.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Scott. It was a very interesting presentation. I really liked how you showed some simple examples. So for me, as for more a beginner in Disciplined Agile, it was really easy to understand. So yes, we have some questions from the audience. And the first one is, Scott, do you find Disciplined Agile as another method to run a project or something else? Meaning for example, as a changing culture at work?
Yeah, it really, the focus of Disciplined Agile really is on teaching you how to improve. If you're looking for guided, instructions on how to run a project, well, look at the Look at some of the other publications at PMI, but this is really, how do you improve? How do you get better? How do you become a coach, an improvement coach?
Mm-hmm.
Piotr also asked a question. Project changing business processes are physical or virtual in your understanding, Scott?
Both. If you look at what goes on in physical construction projects, they improve. They change the ways. They're changing their ways of working in the middle of a project, just like an IT team would, like a software development team. Now, of course, it tends to be a bit easier in the software world than in the physical world, but just because you're dealing with more malleable artifacts. But yeah, you can improve. You can always improve. You can always get better. For those of you who have ever been sports people, this is the secret of sports people, right? We're just about to go to, some countries at least are about to go to the Winter Olympics this year. And all those Olympians, they train constantly. They're constantly trying to improve and taking a tenth of a second off their time, or a hundredth of a second off their time in many cases these days. They're constantly improving. That's pure physical. Constantly improving, constantly getting better. That's the secret of winning in that environment.
Yeah, so constant improvement in every area of life, not only at work. That's true. And there is one more question. I think it's more complex from Bartek. It's how many areas of projects or company Disciplined Agile covers? Like, for example, quality assurance or budgeting. If it covers those two areas, how deeply? Like branching strategy, no budgeting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let me go back. I've got slides on those very topics.
I think, Scott, you already answered that question, and also thanks, Valentin, to comment my questions. Yeah, you can, of course, dig into right now, but to be honest, I'm a newbie to Disciplined Agile, and already answered I get are fits me. It's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Yeah. So the quick answer is yes. It's all across the board, and particularly those process goals I just showed at the team level. There were some quality specific goals, some metric specific goals, governance, and we go deep into all those topics. And then the diagram with all the hexes on it, same sort of thing, right? So we go deep into security was one of the hexes, and data management and so on.
Thanks.
Yeah, so good to see that at least the people who were listening to the presentation already found their answers. So really good feedback. We have also one question from Agnieszka. It's how and if Disciplined Agile links in any way to the organizational change management. Like she's meaning the way of helping people in the organization adopt the change in the structure or managed way.
Yeah, so we're actually working. We're months away from publishing anything, but we're actually in the process of working on a micro accreditation around agile change management, and certainly change management has been built into the toolkit, but it's been more of an aspect. It hasn't really been surfaced as a critical thing. But yeah, we're working on a micro credit on exactly that topic. That's a great question. So stay tuned, probably in Q2.
Okay, good to have these updates. Also, here is some question about, can we call you Agile Doctor since it's guided prescription on Agile?
Oh, don't call me doctor. There's legal implications there. Yeah, I know. It's funny. It's interesting when you learn how to use the toolkit. You quickly it looks daunting, right? So because I'll just share again because I have diagrams. But yeah, so in behind each of those ovals is a diagram that looks like this, right? In behind each of these hexes are also diagrams that look like that. So there's about 35, 40 some odd goal diagrams when it gets down to it. And then that in turn leads to descriptions of text and things like that. Right now, there's about 1,600 strategies in the toolkit, and it constantly growing. And see, so it looks daunting, and it is, to be fair. But the thing is once you learn how to navigate it, then suddenly the details don't matter anymore, because once you've got the skill of finding what you need, you can go and read, and then you can dive down into the details when and only when you need to. So I think that's the thing. Like, so we open up all these options to you. But nobody's got the toolkit memorized. I don't. I've been working on it for over 10 years, and I certainly don't. I probably have a better chance of finding things very quickly off the top of my head. But yeah, once you learn how to navigate the toolkit, it's really straightforward. You just just follow the trail.
Okay, so I think we have also another questions and also the time to answer them. One of them is also from Bartek. How can you get the Disciplined Agile t-shirt? So, well, join our team, yeah? And maybe we will be organizing some competitions, maybe the t-shirts in the future. It's a nice gift for the best. I don't know. I will think about it. Thanks for inspiration.
That's a good. And we should actually have swag. It should be possible to order swag on the site. We just haven't gotten to it.
I think also maybe later we will be like more professional, and we will have our VA store for t-shirts.
Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah. But as for now, for everybody, if you want to become a PMI volunteer and also join our team and have these beautiful t-shirts, please feel free. We're a very nice and welcoming team.
And have so many nice pre-talks with our guests and speakers. Yeah. It's really valuable, really the best of the best. Okay, so Scott, there are another questions also. Can we use Disciplined Agile in field other than IT? If yes, can you provide a meta Disciplined Agile which direct people how to use Disciplined Agile in different fields? It's a question from Fire. Mm-hmm.
We get asked that question all the time. The answer is yes. We certainly Agile in general came out of the IT space, and so did DA. But over time, as you can see, I won't go back to the hex diagram, but there's stuff there for sales and marketing and vendor management. There's only one real layer, the DevOps layer, which is IT focused, and there's also a hex for IT, but to wrap it all together. But everything else is not IT. The foundation layer is not IT, so the orange bar at the bottom. There's a lot of not IT stuff there. So if you're an IT organization like a bank, which is based in IT shop, it's in the financial industry, then, and sometimes they don't see it that way, but it's true. Then certainly it's very applicable. But we see non-IT oriented organizations all the time doing this, and we've got some. I don't have my slide, my usual logo slide available, but like a pizza. There's a pizza chain that applied it. I've done it in physical world. I've done it actually in the system engineering world with medical devices. So the software and the hardware in medical devices. Automotive has done this. The automotive industry has done this as well. So there's a wide range of organizations doing these sorts of things. Because when it gets down to it, like just Agile in general is about better collaboration, better feedback, working together more effectively. And frankly, you can do that anywhere. Lean is all about better efficiencies. Also, you can do that anywhere. I personally built a house using hybrid Agile techniques. After failing, the original contractor failed using traditional techniques. It wasn't until we got more Agile that we finally got the project done.
Do you have an article on blog post about it, just to read it?
I did a little bit. I can't really write it up yet because I'm still in court with the original contractor. So they owe me a bit of money. But yeah, so once that gets cleared out, then I can start writing. I'll be cleared to write about it more effectively. But basically what happened was they're using traditional techniques and things happened. But partway through the project, we realized that changes were needed. And so we started doing it that way. And particularly towards the end, on smaller things we did now, but it was it's still a hybrid strategy where we like basic things like figuring out the foundation and where rooms are going to be, like, all the scaffolding stuff. You need to think that's particularly a foundation. You need to figure that stuff out, and basic plumbing and stuff, and where the hydro is coming in and good things like that. But there's a lot of leeway everywhere else. One of the things we did, which was a bit strange, was we added windows after the house was built. It was framed, but not quite there yet. So we realized, because it was only until the frame was up that we realized we were missing a window in a very key spot. So we had to redo things. There's actually, I'm not sure if it's written up yet, but a hospital in Toronto a couple of years ago was built using hybrid agile techniques, where they put the concrete, they put the structure of the building up. Using traditional techniques, because laws of physics and regulations and good stuff like that. But they decided on figuring out the layouts of each floor at the point in time, like right towards the end, at the point in time where they were finishing up. And the reason why they did that approach is it takes years to build a hospital, right? Because you got to go through all the planning and permissions and that. And Toronto is a city that grows through immigration, dramatically and quickly grows through immigration. So they're building this hospital, and when they started the project, they didn't know what they would need at the end for a couple of reasons. First, the technology changes dramatically. Second, the population in that area was changing dramatically. So because it was going to be like 5 years to do this project, they had no idea what the population was going to be 5 years, from the day that they started it, right? They only knew it was going to be different than what it was. So because if you end up with a lot of seniors in that area, the medical needs are very different than if you've got a bunch of young couples with families, right? The needs of war refugees are much different than the needs of somebody who's immigrating from Europe, from parts of Europe, say. So we, for example, we picked up a lot of Syrian refugees a couple of years ago. We're picking up other groups of refugees now as well. So this is the way Toronto grows. So if they had stuck to a project plan, it would have been guaranteed to have been an abysmal failure. So they didn't do that. That would be just totally foolish. They actually also, my understanding was they added a wing onto the hospital as well, because the population grew faster than they thought it was going to grow. So stuff happens, right? So sticking to a plan, like a traditional approach where you're sticking to a plan, would have been the kiss of death. It was totally the wrong way to build a hospital. So I thought that was interesting. Another interesting project, now it wasn't a DA project, but the Mars surveyor team was a very agile team. And you would think that they're dealing with pure laws of physics, which they were, but they didn't know what those laws of physics were. And trying to hit a planet 200 million miles away with a 1-ton spacecraft that hits the atmosphere at 10,000 miles an hour and has a couple hundred kilometers in which to land at 0 kilometers an hour, is a reasonably and not crash, is a reasonably interesting problem. And the traditional approaches did not work for that. If they hadn't worked in an agile manner, they would not have landed a probe on Mars.
So I think in this case we will be waiting for your post. So as you said earlier,
The
house story is pretty interesting, but I just can't go into details.
And we can really recommend you also both PMI and Disciplined Agile team described on LinkedIn and on the PMI blog the success story of implementing Disciplined Agile. So it's really valuable, and also the community has the series. I think one in 2 weeks. We write about success story with Disciplined Agile. Hopefully soon we'll also writing about success story in Europe.
Let's get those success stories written up and on the site, and that would be great. We would love to hear that.
Yeah, that's true. So always like shared lessons. They're like the best one. We are coming, I think, to the end of the Q&A session. Maybe just one last one. It's actually quite a good one. So Scott, you said that at the beginning of your presentation that agile-based frameworks, they only increase efficiency by max of 12%. So are there already any studies that show the effectiveness of implementing DA in organizations?
Yeah. So what that study showed was an average of 7 to 12%. So some people are getting better, some are getting worse, right? So, but that was an average. We're actually in the process of doing such a study. I'm working with with a team right now that will hopefully get something sometime in the new year, probably towards the end of the year, because researchers are. It's hard. It takes a while to research and publish, but yeah, we're working on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm working with people who are working on it. I'm not working on it because we've got to have no bias.
Yeah. So information for everybody. Stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned.
I think we have still a couple questions unanswered. So information for everybody. Scott kindly agreed to answer to these questions later. So we will just pass them on to him, and he will write answers for us, and they will be published on our social medias, meaning LinkedIn and also Facebook. So also follow us, and you will get all the information you need. And so again, Scott, thanks a lot for also presentation and also answering all these questions. Just maybe if you could stay for us just for a bit longer. We just want to summarize the meeting. So the first important organizational information is about PDU points. So this professional development units for those who are collecting them. For this event, you can get 1.5 point. So here you have information about code and identifier, and also we will send it to you by email. So don't worry, you don't need to write it down right now, just so you know that it's available. And then also regarding more information about not only Disciplined Agile, but generally about from Project Management Institute. So here we have 2 events coming from PMI PC side. They will be in Polish, but just generally we also, as you see, we also organize events in English. So these 2 events, the one will be on Wednesday, and it will be about how to be a good facilitator. And the second one is going to be on Friday about the basics of project management, but in, let's say, less theoretical way. And here is also our team, our humble team, which is spreading, helping to spread the knowledge about DA. So also, let's give just a second of acknowledge to them, to us. And thank you guys for making this event and this generally this spread of knowledge happen here in Poland, and also, as we can see, internationally, as we have some people from the outside. And also, so here we would like to thank you all for joining us.